We know that India raised eyebrows in the UN when it abstained twice from condemning Russia. Take us through why India has adopted such an approach. Does it go back to 1971 when the Soviet Union then came to the rescue of India when it was fighting with Pakistan?
Thank you, Haslinda. Well, the relationship that India and Russia have is a very time-trusted partnership. It's weathered the passage of time. You mentioned the Indo-Soviet Treaty of 1971. And even after the collapse of the Soviet Union, of course, the relationship had to adjust itself to the new realities of the global situation. But it has endured. And there is a lot of mutual trust and confidence between the two countries. Their two leaders have stayed in frequent touch, even up to a few days ago. Now, the situation in Ukraine, as we all see it, is extremely unfortunate. And you have seen a humanitarian crisis unfolding before your eyes. We have about 20,000 Indian students stranded in Ukraine. They went there for a medical education, and nobody, I believe, foresaw the turn that developments would take in Ukraine. So there is a humanitarian question here, and India's priority is to evacuate those students. It has made 3 abstentions in the United Nations about the situation in Ukraine. India has not condemned the Russian action, but given the fact that you are dealing with a very fast-moving set of developments here, very fast evolving situation, we'll see how India's stance on the issue develops.
What do you think it would take for India to condemn Russian action?
I believe in the public space, there is a very spirited debate going on in India about the rights and wrongs of Russia's actions. I think the questions that have been raised are relating to the United Nations Charter, relating to international humanitarian law, and the question of whether Russia has violated that by its actions. I know in absolute terms, the answer would be that there is a violation of the international borders of that exist between two countries. And the principle of territorial integrity and national sovereignty is one of the foundational principles of Indian foreign policy. If you recall, it was one of the coping stones, literally, of the 5 principles of peaceful coexistence that had been jointly formulated by India and China way back in 1954. And that outlook about the preservation of national sovereignty and territorial integrity is very strongly upheld by India. And in fact, in the explanation to the vote, the abstentions in the United Nations, India's permanent representative in the United Nations has stressed this principle. And I'm sure that emphasis is going to be further highlighted in the days to come. So India is, I'm sure, definitely, I'm not in touch with the government. I'm a retired official, as you know. I speak as a citizen now, a concerned citizen. And as citizens, I think we're all concerned about the fallout of the Russian actions.
Ambassador, how does China play into this? Is Russia seen as a bulwark against China for India here as it continues its struggle there?
Well, I don't know if Russia is seen as a bulwark today in India. I think the relationship has evolved considerably over the last decade. The communication channels are completely open with Russia, don't get me wrong. And India is a part of the Russia-India-China trilateral, as you know. But the situation regarding China-Russia relations is also a fast-evolving one. And the two countries have got much closer. They're much more bound together than they were ever before, and they talk about a limitless partnership. But I get I instinctively feel that China is perhaps it has also been a little taken aback by the turn in developments in Ukraine. Nobody seems to have foreseen the turn that these developments would take. For instance, if India had known that conflict was imminent, I'm sure that instructions or advisories would have been issued to our students to leave Ukraine summarily, immediately, without delay. But that didn't happen. So, in a sense, I think both India and China, I'm sure, having taken stock of these developments, are focusing much more in a much more concerted manner on how they are going to adjust their positions regarding the Russian invasion of Ukraine in the days to come.
What about India itself and its position in the Quad? Of course, that includes the likes of the United States, Japan and Australia. How does it maintain a voice there with the same vociferousness as the others?
Well, India has a very credible and important and significant voice within the Quad. You saw the meeting of the Quad leaders, the virtual meeting of the Quad leaders yesterday. The focus, of course, as far as India has been concerned, I'm sure they had very frank discussions at that meeting. We're not privy to the tone and content of those discussions, but I've seen the statement issued after the meeting, and the focus seems to be on all four countries working together to alleviate the humanitarian crisis in Ukraine and the lessons to be learned from that. I think India is going to be in constant touch with its most important strategic partner today, the United States, particularly on this issue, and of course with Japan and Australia. We're all democracies which upheld the rule-based international order, and that has been, in a sense, we have seen the kind of fault lines that have emerged in that context, and India, as a Eurasian country, is concerned about this.
Ambassador Rao, you talked about the Indian students stuck in Ukraine. Did the Indian government underappreciate the crisis playing out in Ukraine, and why is it left scrambling now?
I think, Haslinda, every country seems to have underappreciated the situation in Ukraine and what the fallout of Russian actions would be. Russia itself had said that it wouldn't be crossing the border, international border. That seems to be the signals that we received from Russia. I am sure that the Indian government must have been in touch with the Russians on this prior to all that we've seen happening. But the fact is, yes, there was an underappreciation of how the situation would evolve. But we're all part of a larger community of nations where that is concerned. There are a number of countries who have nationals stranded in Ukraine. So coming back to my central point, this is a serious humanitarian crisis, and civilians are involved, and the war has to stop, the conflict has to stop, and diplomacy and dialogue have to take over. What the emerging order in Central Europe will be following these developments, we really don't know. What the European security architecture is going to look after this. Everything is in a state of churn.
That you can certainly say is true. I just want to move to relations with Beijing, between Delhi and China. How would you characterize them at the moment? Because it was about a year ago looking as though we were looking at a situation which could go very hot given skirmishes on the border. Is there more of a will now? Is there more of a rapprochement or détente between the two?
Well, there's been no lack of will on the part of India to seek a disengagement and a de-escalation of the situation that we face along the line of actual control along the northern frontiers of India with China, particularly in the region that all of you are aware, what is called Ladakh, the eastern Ladakh region, where there's very close confrontation between troops of both sides. So that militarization of the line of actual control is a matter of serious concern. There is a threat of conflict that hangs over our heads. 2022 is the 60th anniversary of the war or the conflict between India and China of 1962. Both countries, I think, made serious and sincere efforts to normalize relations after that. We built a structure of a management regime, you could call it, in this relationship that held the peace along the line of actual control for close to 45 years. That's more than 4 decades. It's the events of June 2020 in the Galwan Valley that completely changed the situation. And as a result, relations between the two countries have been in a very poor state of health. What is some signal for optimism is that the two countries have stayed in touch. The military commanders have had frequent meetings. De-escalation and some degree of disengagement has taken place in some pockets along the line of actual control, but not in all the disputed pockets. Right. Unfortunately, we don't have a jointly determined line of actual control, and a border settlement seems far away. So that really is what I have to say.